All right, well, let's address the elephant in the room here. So yesterday, report came out, and something that there were some rumblings over the past few days after the Raiders did lose to the Steelers, where their playoff hopes dwindled by a lot. Though Micah did speak into existence a way to keep our playoff hopes alive with that parlay, but that the Raiders are going to bench Derek Carr for the remaining 2 games. So he'll be inactive, and he will also not be a part of the team. So he is basically dismissed from the team. Apparently, they agreed on that to where it wouldn't be a distraction. If you were shocked by the news, here is what basically, and we'll get into kind of our feelings and thoughts, but more so what happened. This basically means that Derek Carr's tenure with the Raiders is over. The way his contract is structured is that if he gets hurt, that 40 million, I believe around 40 million of his contract is guaranteed. So that was another reason. So they want to get rid of him. They want to potentially find a trade partner in the off season, and they have a window to do so before this next year's contract, this next year's salary gets guaranteed. So right after the Super Bowl is basically what their window is. I forgot. I think it's like a week or a couple days, or it's not much. Basically, once the Super
It,
Bowl ends,
yeah, I think it's like 3 days, three or
3 days.
three or four
Yeah,
days after the Super Bowl.
yeah. So it's a weird window, but basically, after February 8th is when his contract gets fully guaranteed for the 2023 season, and for all intents and purposes, the Raiders are parting ways with Carr. So they're going to bench him for the next 2 games, just to make sure that he stays. To make sure he doesn't get injured, and really to where they are able to find a trade partner, and or if they don't in those 3 days, which they're not going to start having conversations for when the 3 day window starts, but more so that's the window that they have to either cut or trade him. If they don't find a trade partner, then they will probably eventually cut him. But I would say that the market for him is going to be relatively hot. But we'll get into that. Just what I wanted to start with, Mike, is just what kind of like first reactions when you saw it, when you saw kind of news trickle in, and then the additional stuff around. There's one thing to bench a quarterback because he's not playing well, which he's not. He's not playing well right now. But once you saw more of the reports around why and what it ultimately meant for the Raiders and Derek Carr, what were your thoughts once that all came out yesterday?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a little bit of a process of things leading up to that point. I watching post game pressers and I think it was the presser Monday after practice or whenever they do their whenever McDaniels did a presser. I believe it was Vinny asked him about how they do their decisions in regards to it was really angled towards like are you like playing Carr because of the way of his contract and the way injury kind of hinders their side of things or whatnot. And McDaniel had a very professional, like, we're going to do what's best for the team. And he kind of lumped him in there with people like Divine Diablo, who are coming off IR, whether it's a good idea to play them. And like, Cars was the only situation where it was kind of, money based, best intentions for a team type based thing, as opposed to like, we only have 2 games left. Player coming off of IR, probably don't really want to get him injured again. You know what I mean, type of thing. So, but he lumped him in there, saying they're always going to take everything into consideration and do what's best all around for the team or whatnot. So, and then when it really hit me was when I saw on Twitter that the spread of the Niners game went from, I think they were at -6. And then it started jumping. It went like -7, -9, and then settled at -10. And, people were saying, think there's a chance that Carr might be sat. And probably 2 hours later is when that news actually came out. So I feel like Vegas had some type of like inside knowledge a little bit ahead of time on things that were gonna be happening. But like I said earlier, it was one of those things that seemed like it didn't necessarily feel like it was going to happen. It just felt like Twitter talk, like Twitter talk always has been for Derek Carr over his 9 years, whether it was new quarterback coming in or him getting cut or him getting traded, whatever it was. But looking at it, it's like if it was ever going to happen, this kind of lines up as best as possible with like the way he's been playing, the way his contract pans out, the way the team can, essentially get an out without having to guarantee him. I think his base salary was like 35 million, and then he also had like 7.5 million. I think it's one of those situations where, we've just tried for so long. We've given him the benefit of the doubt for so long. And, it was in the article that I wrote, but it's like it's not by fault of any one or another, but it's also the fault of all parties as well, just the way it's all accumulated, which doesn't necessarily make sense. But it's like sometimes you just got to move on. Sometimes it's just best to start new and, stop hoping that things are going to get better and that they're just going to turn around. It's kind of sad that this is the end of an era, but I'm also excited for it because I feel like over the last few years, I've just like slowly and slowly stopped defending him as much as I used to, and like, or at least giving him the benefit of the doubt as much as I used to. And I think I'm just ready for it to move on and see where we go from here. It is going to be very interesting because he has a no trade clause on his contract. So he is going to have to, approve of anything. And he's been very vocal about it's Raiders or golf. Like if he's not playing for the Raiders, like he's perfectly fine retiring. He's got a lot of interests outside of football. He has definitely made plenty enough money. He doesn't need the money in regards to everything. And yeah, so it's going to be very interesting on what his decision is because he did have his nephews have the Harvester podcast or whatever it was, and he was on there for like a month or so, maybe a little less than a month before he got extended or whatnot. And he said, you know, whether it's my decision or theirs, like I'm either going to be a Raider or I'm going to be golfing. Like I don't want to play for another team. And he seemed very content. So I think at this point we're going to really see like how serious he was about that because he'll have that chance to keep his contract and move on to another team. But at the end of the day, he could very well say like, I'm not gonna go play for another team. I'm gonna retire. So they're just gonna have to cut him. So it's a wild saga that has unfolded. And we've got Jarrett Stidham starting this game. It'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, I mean, where they go from here is just gonna be, I don't know. It's just as it unfolds, it's gonna be, a lot to take in, a lot to handle. The Raiders, they have 9 draft picks this pick. They might be, if they're able to get, a couple for Carr, freeing that up also gives them like close to 65 million in cap, which would be like in top 3 of the NFL. So like this really poses a big off. This is a big off season for us. In the case that they are able to trade him, if they can get a first or whatever they can get for him, if they can get a couple picks, like we're going to be in a 10 plus pick range and a lot of free agency money. So it's wild. I was kind of all over the place with that, but I mean, as this kind of unfolded, it was just like, holy shit, it's happening. I don't know, is Tom Brady coming in? Is Aaron Rodgers going to come in? Is it, all this stuff just starts to surface on like what is going to be next? So yeah, I'll stop it there because I was just rambling, I think, for the better part of like 9 minutes. So I will flip
Yeah,
it over to you.
yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. What are we supposed to be super concise here and have like, oh, okay, here's what's actually going to happen. It's like, no, dude, this like we're a couple weeks removed from being in a good spot to make a playoff run, and potentially control our own destiny, which we did control our own destiny in the way of like Final Destination, where we just killed ourselves. So I'm saying I don't expect because I'm not going to be concise here because I don't know what to think. Definitely have kicked the can on it for a few weeks now, and you and I have talked offline a little bit just around the possibilities and what could happen. Um, I agree with what you said, where it's think we knew it was time to move on. We knew that he isn't the answer, and sometimes you just have to pull the plug, right? I agree with that. It's something that he's been our quarterback for 9 years, and that's a lot for the Raiders because prior to that there wasn't much stability prior, during in between Carr and Rich Gannon, who was played for 4 years and, was MVP, Pro Bowl, whatever. But so I agree with that, and I'm okay with that. Here's my problem, dude. Okay, and I know this is hindsight, but it's more about here's what the ripple effect could be. Every decision we made once McDaniels and Ziegler came over, when it comes to free agency, when it came to the draft, when it came to everything, right? Contract extensions, right? Not just Carr, right? Inked up Max Crosby. I think that's a no brainer. Declined Jacobs' option because we wanted to feel it out, which is fine. Now he leads the NFL in rushing. We're going to have a sick decision there, right? The Davante Adams deal, Carr was the reason he came. Okay, don't get it twisted. If it was Jarrett Stidham on the Raiders, Adams wouldn't have came, right? He took less money to go play with Carr for his childhood team and his best friend, right? That's honestly what happens, and it doesn't make sense because we don't live in this world of business decisions being more like, on the personal side. But that's what Adams did, right? He didn't just have to get out of Green Bay. He saw an opportunity to, and he took that. So, and that was revolved around Carr. You extend Darren Waller and you extend Hunter Renfrow, right? Those deals made sense. But all of this stuff that we did, like I said, from start to finish, were for win now, right? Because we had a team that we felt with our acquisitions of Chandler Jones, Davante Adams, re-signing. I think Crosby would have happened regardless if we were rebuilding or not, right? But I just think it puts us in a really bad spot because we'll talk about after this just how, like, what are the options where we could go. But like what I'm saying is, like, everything that we've done since Carr's extension and McDaniels and Ziegler coming have been around, this is a team that has a window to make a run at it. And now we're just pulling the plug on our quarterback, which I get it from the sense of how he's been playing and the window that we have with his contract to potentially move on. But there is going to be a ripple effect with Adams. We don't know what that's going to be. Okay, but it's going to happen. Either he might just want out, or I don't know. I just don't know if he's going to sign up for Raiders drafting Will Levis, at 7 overall or whatever it may be, right? Or hey, we'll kick the can on a stopgap quarterback, right? I don't know how Adams is going to feel about that. I think it puts us in an interesting spot with Waller. You see, we gave him a contract extension. He's played 5 games, and he's been limited in 2 or 3 of them. So it's just going to be interesting with the names around the organization that are franchise names. Carr being one of them, Waller, Adams, as of this year. Like I think it just puts us in a shit spot, and and like I said, it is hindsight's 2020 because like all those moves made sense, and then it just didn't work out. So instead of just saying, hey, let's just, we blew some leads, let's try to get better on defense and run it back, with Carr again, they just said, nope, Carr's not our guy. And we had talked about this when we've had such an up and down season of the Raiders in general, starting off slow, picking up some wins, blowing some games, 3-game winning streak, like it's just been ruckus mentally and emotionally for everyone in Raider Nation. But we did talk about it where I said, hey, I think it's going to be a fork in the road with McDaniels and Carr, and Mark Davis is going to have to choose. Now, I don't think McDaniels would have taken the job if there was an opportunity that he was going to get fired after his in his first year because he disagrees on the quarterback. If he went 0-14 or 0-17, obviously, but no, he's done enough to show that there is a plan in place for this organization. And I think he got enough power and security from Mark Davis to where we knew if the season doesn't go right, and it's mostly going to be because of Carr, not mostly, but like there's a lot of games that he cost us. There's a lot of games that he just wasn't good enough. And that's why we're here now. Right. So clearly McDaniels is where Mark Davis is going, and he's going to hang his hat on. And so there goes Carr. Right. Well, that was a lot too. That was a lot of a ramble, but I think it just puts us, I agree with, sometimes when and you just got to tear it down and start fresh there. But it just puts us in a tough spot with a roster that has been structured to win in the next 1 to 3 years. Let's just transition to how do you find that quarterback to then come in and fill the gap of what Carr is, that's realistic, that'll then be able to keep the core pieces in place and move towards next year with a team that can contend. So yeah, I'll stop there. But overall, it is sad to see him go. I've had my things with Carr, and I think he's a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. He is not the problem, but not the solution. And I've said that a couple times, but I just think that's just who he is. And now we're in a tough spot to figure out what is next for Raider Nation. So I think a key point that you hit on too is the fact that he has no trade clause, and that's going to be interesting because he's going to have to agree to it, or he's going to retire. So we'll see where that goes. But first, really, it comes down to three options: draft a rookie quarterback, first-round quarterback, and say, let's go. Find a stopgap, okay, which is a couple names that we can talk about, or you go all in for that 1 to 2 year window for an aging veteran that can come in and take a team that's in win now and give it kind of our best shot for next year. So what do you think as far as options go? Where do you think the Raiders should go? And overall, where do you think we find the solution for next year? I know it's hard, but just what are some thoughts, ideas that you have as far as what the potential QB solution could be for Las Vegas coming into 2023 season?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because there is so many options of what do you do. There is multiple ways that you can go. I think that when you look at the way the draft is panning out at the moment, you have a team like the Seahawks who have Denver's really high pick, who also have a second first round pick. Are they willing? Are they wanting to try to go rookie quarterback, or are they wanting to try to come out and get someone like Carr, who they might be able to, help push them? You have the someone like the Colts, who he's always been linked to. If there was one team that Carr's been linked to every year, that would be like, this is the perfect team for Carr. It's the Colts, and they're kind of in a position where they're ahead of the Raiders. Are they really in a spot to snag one of the top guys? Who knows? Obviously, who knows what their plan is, but they don't have the quarterback of the future on their roster right now. So where do they plan to go with that? So there's situations where you have teams that you might be able to, trade up with in regards to that. Whether any of those teams are going to value Carr there or not, who knows? Then you have the situation, like you said, of, all right, are you going to bring someone in to kind of fill that spot? Who's going to be that person? Are they going to be as good as Carr or better? It's hard to think that there's anybody out there that has a chance to continue on this run of where they're at. Everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but it seems like Tom Brady is kind of going to be the only option of like where we could go that kind of actually has a chance to be better, unless we wanted to go all in after like a Lamar Jackson, which would be a wild concept to do. I never would ever think that the Raiders would kind of go all in on something like that, but that would be so dope. But it almost feels like that's what our options are. That, or, go all in for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, well, would you rather have them, or would you rather go all in for Caleb Williams next year? So it's just so much to think about, because I feel like you're going to have to draft a rookie, right? But can you realistically get to a point where you are going to get one of the top two guys this year? Because if you can go up and get Bryce Young, it's worth, I feel like, trading the farm to try to go up and get him. But at the same time, what's it going to take to do that? Is it actually a possibility with, who's going to be up there and who's going to want a quarterback also? But the Raiders have been in this weird limbo spot of like, Carr's been good enough to make us decent and like vie for a playoff spot each year, but then also like not bad enough that we're in a spot to potentially take his successor. Like I mentioned before, he never really had a successor there to like push him and, get on his heels for taking over his spot. But now we're in this weird spot of like, okay, where are we? What kind of like weird purgatory are we in to either go from here and try to continue on with this win now team that we have, or are we just going to try to get someone young, hope it pans out in the next couple years. Who knows? Maybe it pans out year one, but they've got to go out and try to get someone young. They got to go out and try to get that quarterback of the future. But how do you not take a huge step backwards while also doing that? So I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like free agent market wise, it's only going to really make a whole lot of sense to try to go all in on Lamar Jackson or bring in Tom Brady, which looks more and more likely, unfortunately, because he's made comments about not wanting to retire, right? And if there was any chance he was coming over here, it's with McDaniels as the head coach now. It's like, fuck, man. Like, this might actually happen, and I don't know how I feel about that. But I'd be hard pressed to look around there and look around the league on who the free agents are going to be. I honestly haven't dove into what the options are going to be out there. But really, the only names that come to mind are Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady. Not to say Carr's better than every quarterback except for those two, but when you're looking at our options, you know what I mean? It's like it's going to be hard to you either got to go in all in for a rookie, go all in for Lamar Jackson, or go out there and try to bring Brady in and see what'll happen. Seems like our only options, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just going to be fascinating. There's, we fortunately or unfortunately, we're not going to be content poor this off season because there's going to be a lot of stuff going. But yeah, I mean, I think we're at a spot right now. I think we're at number 9 overall in the draft. You look ahead, you look at the Colts, who, like you said, has been tied to Carr for a long time. They have the number 5 spot in the draft. I don't think they'll give us 5 outright. I think there'd have to be some picks and everything like that. But I also don't. I mean, the Texans are going to have the number 1 overall pick unless they pull out a random victory, which they shouldn't have beat the Titans last week just because they wanted to kill their fan base. If I was Texas, I'd be like, "Come on, guys, just take this thing." But I think they're in a spot where they've torn down their whole roster, where they're not going to move off Bryce Young, in my opinion. But we'll see. Now, does a CJ Stroud or a Will Levis make sense? Yeah, I think what could make sense is bringing in a stopgap free agent quarterback, and then also drafting someone like a Stroud or a Levis in the first round. Kind of doing both, right? Having someone that can compete. I mean, who knows how Stidham's going to come or play out, this year. I mean, he has 2 games, right? But they might evaluate him as being a better option than some of the free agents that are coming this year. Just a few names that are going to hit the free agency. Tom Brady, as you mentioned, there's Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, just to name a few. Jacoby Brissett, if you're into that kind of thing. The Jimmy G, oh my gosh, that would go full cycle where I would be like, I'm out, and it's not, I would be like, what, because I think what he's done is because of the Niners, okay, and because of Kyle Shanahan. Look at Brock Purdy, okay, Mr. Irrelevant. He just looks like Jimmy G. If anything, a little bit more, he can move in the pocket, still quick release. It's like he's going to get paid in free agency. Sure hope we don't pay him, okay, because it had nothing to do. I think Jimmy G is fine, but that is a step backwards from Carr. And if you're looking to bring him, I don't think he's going to be someone that fetches like a team friendly, here's a 2-year deal, whatever, incentive based guarantees. I think he's going to go get paid for a team that is QB needy, which there's a lot of teams out there, right? So I think there's just a few teams out there. You look at Houston, Indianapolis. Once again, I think Houston goes with Bryce Young. Indianapolis is going to be a potential there. You look at New England. Where are they at with Mac Jones? That would be hilarious if it was just a Mac Jones for Derek Carr swap. But hope that doesn't happen. 2 teams that are very fascinating that are in, because we also have to take it to, like, if you're on the other side and you're trying to acquire Carr, you also have to have a team that you're like, we're a quarterback away from making a run. Tennessee Titans, number 1. Tannehill, I don't know where he's at with his contract, but has been hurt. Also hasn't shown signs of being the answer to take that team over the top. They have a solid defense, and they have Derrick Henry, right? They have all these things where they potentially could win the AFC South, which is going to be hilarious, but they're playing for their lives basically week 18 against the Jaguars, which is hilarious in my opinion. But go Jaguars. Shout out Richard Haynes, friend of the pod. So I don't know. I think you look at the Titans as another, a new team that could be interesting. And this is where and I promise this is not a bit for me by any means, but I just started laughing once I started going down the rabbit hole of the Jets. And here's why. The Jets are clearly a quarterback away from making around a great defense. Okay. They'll get Brees Hall. Yeah, Brees Hall. Bryce Hall is a cornerback. They'll get Brees
Same
Hall.
team too.
Yeah, same team. Crazy. They'll get Brees Hall back next year, which he tore his ACL, unfortunately, but he was going, on the basically projection of being like a top 5 running back in the league. And they have weapons. So could Carr be in a New York Jet? Potentially. FYI, he doesn't play great in the cold. And last time I checked, it gets pretty cold pretty early in New York. But that he just prepare for him to wear sleeves constantly. But what I started laughing about is like they're out on Zach Wilson, right? Like Zach Wilson's probably played his last down for the Jets. Do I think that McDaniels is conceited enough to think he can fix Zach Wilson? My Zach Wilson, yeah, I think so. I think he is, and I don't know how I would feel about it because it would make even then every game, every week, which is a game that he plays, like double potential for me to like implode emotionally because I was a big Zach Wilson guy in the draft, still on the table for him. He has not panned out certainly, and the Jets are moving off of him after 2 short years. But I just started laughing. I'm like, the Jets are a team that would probably be linked to the Raiders, and they could do something with picks and be like, here's Zach Wilson also in return. And McDaniel will say, okay, well, I have 23-year-old quarterback who has a lot of talent, who has a lot of tools to be great, and I can fix him. I could see that happening. I could honestly see that happening where he's included in the trade package. Think of Carson Wentz last year, right, where he was on the Colts going to the Commanders. It was in a similar spot where he had this contract that they had to kind of work with, where the Commanders had to take, they had to structure it, take some of it. So whenever you're taking on that big of a contract, as you don't get, it's not just like, oh, what's your value on Derek Carr? It's like, what's your value on Derek Carr and his contract? So who knows how that's going to play out. So it could be some restructuring, but I could see here's Zach Wilson, a second and a third or a second and a fourth, and we'll take Carr and a fifth, right? Something like that. I don't know. It's going to be bananas regardless. I think unless you go for a Brady, which I would not be a fan of, and if we do go that route, I'm going to have to talk myself into why it's going to work. Unless you go Brady or, like you said, a big splash with Lamar Jackson where he doesn't have a new contract with the Ravens. Maybe he forces his way out of Baltimore because they're just not going to pay him what he wants. So we would have to then, it's not the same. Okay. It's not the same as Deshaun Watson because his situation was different, even though it didn't seem like that when they were negotiating, but would be something where it's like, hey, we trade Carr. We would probably have to do it separately. I don't know if the Ravens would want to go tick for tack, there, but if we acquire Lamar, it would be acquire him and give him a deal that he wants, right? That's the Deshaun Watson thing as well. Saying Deshaun Watson came over to the Browns and it was like a sign and trade where traded for Deshaun and then signed him to a new deal. So that's what we'd have to do with Lamar. So who knows? That would be a splash that I would be in support of.
Lamar's a free agent.
Huh?
Lamar's a free agent this year. I'm looking at it. Are
you sure?
I'm looking at it right now. He
I thought he had one more year on his deal.
No, 2022. And then I'm looking at Spot Track right now. It says 2023 he's a UFA.
Yeah, but okay. And yeah, that's where I misstepped there. But I also think that if the Ravens don't sign him to a new deal, they'll just franchise him. So then he'll be under contract, and then you'll have to trade. I don't think they're not going to let him walk, basically.
He also he turned down a 205-year 250 with 133 guaranteed. So you got to think about where that puts you on like what you're going to have to give him to for it to work.
I think and I think the numbers can be similar, right? I think it can be around that 200 to 250 range, but I think he would take 225, 5 at 225, but fully guaranteed, Like, I think it's more about obviously the guaranteed money there, but there's risk involved. So, anyways, there's a lot of different ways you can spin it. Um, Interesting to see what Aaron Rodgers does. That would be very interesting as far as if he decides that he wants to part ways with the Packers, they let him walk. Or I know he has a deal. I would have to look up his contract, but
He's got it out in 2024.
okay, yeah. So he's still
Similar
under
to Carr's
contract.
out.
Yeah, where they might just want to, hey, let's kick the tires here on Jordan Love, and see what we got there, and then Carr returns and goes to Vegas, returns that with Adams. That would be interesting. So I don't know, man. I think that the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is that we trade Carr separately, right? We trade Carr, we get a few picks, second and a third, whatever it may be. I don't know if we'll fetch a first. If anything, it would be like a late first, depending on what team it is, because of the contract, and then put us in a spot to draft a quarterback, Will Levis, CJ Stroud type, and then sign a middle tier stopgap for next year, right? Unfortunately, that could be Jimmy G. I mean, we could still get Brady. Like, if Brady just walks, and we could just sign him for whatever it is, I think that would still be similar to what, I don't know what his salary would be. Anyways, I'm rambling now, but like I could just see like a stopgap, whether it's a Tom Brady or a Jimmy G or someone to come in and fill the void as we develop a new quarterback. So where we're basically kind of like pursuing that window that we have pending, we keep and retain the guys we invested in, Adams, Waller, etc. And then just try to develop a quarterback there. So there's a lot of different ways that this can play out. I don't think it's going to play out. The least likely scenario would be that Carr comes back and they restructure his deal. I don't know. I don't see that happening. I don't see Carr being someone like, well, you sat me, you want to move on, you couldn't find a trade partner, and now you want me back. No, I don't know if he's that kind of guy, but also I don't think they want to do that. I don't think they're like, we really like you, just on a better deal. I don't know if that's the case. I think they just want to move on. So, yeah, basically all this to say that the lot's happened, and I don't know where we're going here, buddy. But anyways, I'll kick it to you. I got to stop thinking for a second.
Yeah, it's cool. Because I'm literally the same situation where you just start rambling, and as you talk, more ideas come to your mind, and so you just start going on about it, and it's just wild. I think what's funny is I think so with Adam's presser that he had at the locker room, they were asking him about this stuff. He was clearly upset. We saw he posted some on Instagram later on as well. But he also was rocking his Fresno State pullover, which felt like a very much a like, this is more my allegiance lies type of thing. Like, as I'm sitting here talking about how frustrated I am about this, like this Fresno State bond is what about what I care about more. So I don't know. Maybe there'll be an article in the future about how going and getting Aaron Rodgers is the only chance at keeping Devontae Adams. I don't know. We'll see. But there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff going on because there's so many opportunities, and I would sign up wholeheartedly for a Zach Wilson coming to the Raiders situation, rocking him and Stidham, and then figure out what to do with the draft with our draft picks on like actually going and trying to get someone or what have you. That would be such a wild situation, and I think at this point, I'd sign up for it. People are gonna probably hang me for saying that, but this would just like our conversations with Soup would just like be so great, be so awesome how it would just come full circle and like, all right, this is going to be the proof on your allegiance to Zach Wilson. But anyways, yeah, it's a lot going on, and there's a lot of uncertainty. At this point, we're just going to kind of see where Stidham goes, but I think there's an outlying chance that like Stidham plays well, and we go into next year with some free agent we brought in that's not Tom Brady, and it's Stidham could very well keep the starting job if he plays well enough, because he knows that playbook better than anyone out there. And Darren Waller even touched on it too, saying like there's a lot of guys that were talking to Stidham and asking him questions about the plays and the reads and what's going on, because he knows it, and he knows it more than anybody there. So he very well could be our answer to that stopgap if he can prove to play well enough. That's yet to be seen. But yeah, I don't
I
know.
just don't. Sorry, and I agree with you. I just don't see this as, if we do go with Stidham and draft a quarterback, or hey, go with Stidham and see how the year plays out. Like, you just blow it up then, right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry, like it's
Yeah.
he's not the answer. He's a good stopgap, but you'd either have to draft someone, that's a high pick, one of the top 3 quarterbacks, or you're saying, well, we're going to rock with Stidham, we're going to make our team better, and we're going to play for the quarterback class of next year. It's like you would just then blow it up. I don't know. I don't know. No, I just don't know. I don't know, guys. I wish I did. This Zach Wilson would be so comical, and it would just give me so much anxiety every game, even more so, because of how much I like him as a player. Personally, I think he's kind of a dickhead, but it is what it is. So, anyways, Derek Carr saga is to be continued, certainly, but we will. I mean, we're going to know in the next 6 weeks, right? I think it's the Super Bowl is
Yeah.
the 11th.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Like
I guess
that.
we were
So,
wrong. I guess we were wrong on the date for Carr's thing,
but yeah,
because
but I think it is
like
3
5
days.
days after. Yeah, 3 or 5 days after the Super Bowl. But yeah, Super Bowl's the 11th. I mean, we're, like you said, 6 weeks out from getting an answer to this, which seems so like soon when you're talking about like an answer for what next season is going to be, but they have to make a decision that quickly. So